Hello, hello. How's it going? I feel like this is lower than normal. Did it come down a little bit? I feel like it just slowly drops down, which is weird. How's it going, everybody? How's it going? Happy Tuesday, I guess. And this daylight savings in the US, I don't know. It's supposed to be the easy one. It hit me hard. Is what it is, though. We are going to get past it and keep dealing with it until they stop doing daylight savings. Anyways, today we are going to, do I call it atrocities? We're going to continue doing some shenanigans. We have been, over the past couple streams, experimenting with RFC, which adjusts how the web view attaches to the window handle. And what this does is shift to a shared interface in which it doesn't necessarily need to be directly attached to the event loop. That's a lot of words to say. You can have multiple web views in the same window, or web view plus other things, or, multiple web views plus anything else that also supports this. So what we experimented with last week was putting a web view over the top of a Bevy app, which is really interesting. I actually was reading an article the other day that City Skylines 2 uses React for its UI, which is really nifty. Ironic though that it had performance issues, but I suspect that's unrelated. That's kind of the use case that I'm curious about, though. If we use HTML, JS, CSS to handle the UI layer over a game, I think that's kind of a really nifty use case. And this RFC enabled that. So now I'm curious, for no reason whatsoever, what happens if we do Tauri and EGUI in a Bevy app? And we might even, I don't know if it'll happen this week, but we might eventually want to flip that to where right now Bevy is sort of the containing thing, or the container of the other things. We might want to see if we can flip that around a little bit. Because I think if you're including Tauri, you kind of want to have it be the container, because it does a bunch of packaging and building for the web view itself. So I don't know how much we want to shift away from that being the containing element. Kind of a gut feel though. Not really sure on how that's going to end up working out. Let's go ahead and flip on over. Hey Chris, good to see you. Good to see you. It's been out for 3 weeks now, this RFC. We jumped on it right away. We've had a couple just sort of mentions or whatever, and a bunch of emojis. I don't see any reason not to do this, and it sounds like it will end up landing. I'm not sure when though. And the bigger thing is it being pulled up in a Tauri and exposed in a way that you can use it within, the umbrella piece. Hey, good to see you. See if I can. I feel like I've tried to pronounce your name before and gotten it wrong. Chibe? Gosh, I'm gonna butcher this. Chawib? I'm sorry. I tried. I feel like I can picture it in my head, but it's not quite brain and mouth are not connecting. Okay, so, hey, and that's working. Is this? Do we have everything working today? Do we have a? Pretty close. I feel like I feel like I can say it in my brain, but my mouth just isn't doing what my brain's telling it. And that works nice. I think we actually have everything working today. Is this working too? I was playing around with some shader stuff today, and oh, did I get the index thing right? I think it was 3D and then a number. Nope, that's not gonna work. You have a running game. Ish. So Chris, I can't quite point all the way up there. Chris runs or has a handful of workshops on rustadventure.dev, and some of those cover the Bevy game engine, which is Rust based, and I've gone through 2 of those. One of which was 2048. I for sure did 2048. And most of the value that you get out of going through something like that is being able to have Chris like talk through it and understand like how all these pieces fit together. So he actually has a bunch that's just hosted on GitHub. So I've gone through it myself, and I have, I think on my other computer, a copy of it. But we pulled down a branch. Well, mute this other. I pulled down a branch. Nice. So I pulled down a branch of Bevy on the 0.12 version of Bevy, and we were running in the 2048 demo last time. So we had that 2048 Bevy game with a webview running over the top of it. That's what we ended up with last time. That should be, I think whoop. I gotta remember where I put it. I think I just cloned it from Rust Adventure, and I think we were just messing around in that, yeah. Yeah, it looks like it. So, this is this is the 2048 with minor adjustments. If you're interested in it, in learning Rust, definitely recommend Chris's work. Yes. Yes, Daniel, right? Speaking of hype, I'm excited for the to finally have the upcoming announcement. But all right. So we got, oh, that's a cat. Hi, cat. Are you coming up here, baby? That was not very hi. Just like jumped up and like ran right into my oh no, don't bite my headphones. Ran right into my arm. So most of what we did was here. We created a plugin, a system on post startup, webview, and init, and that is the thing that gets the window, or it does a window query, gets the handle to that window through the winit windows, which is where does that come from? It's part of the system, the args in the system, and from that we can get the raw window handle. When we have the raw window handle, we're able to use this. This is actually on a branch of a fork of Rye in the Crab Nebula repo. which has this embedded web view. So they did the work in that fork, and now they're working on pushing it upstream into Rye, and then eventually we need to work it into Tauri. So we're on like multiple branches of forks of nested stuff that I don't expect anybody to try to recreate exactly what I've done. But if we go ahead and run this, we should have 2048 with the wrestling org website in a web view over the top of it. So now if you do this in a reasonably real use case, you're probably going to make it. I would expect that the web view is probably going to be one of the upper layers of which you can have transparency to your game. So if I was doing this, I might say the square for 2048 would be the game, and then the pieces up at the top. I think if I expand this out, the score, best, and end game, those might make sense as HTML, JavaScript, CSS. So you think Tauri and Bevy is a viable way to distribute a game? Yeah, here we go. Okay. Not yet. I think it's a very interesting use case. I'm not going to. I think it's a very interesting use case, and I want to see it succeed. TBD on if it will. There are games and use cases where this type of architecture has become a thing. I was saying, I was reading an article the other day, and Cities Skylines 2 was it like C# or something like that? It's built on the Unity engine, and the UI layer is React. There's games in production that have non-insignificant budgets that are backed by big game studios that have this style of architecture. I think this is, in this specific use case, Tauri plus Bevy, that, especially that combination, is a very that ecosystem is not nearly mature enough to ship yet, I would say. But I want to see it succeed. I think it's really nifty to have that as an option. Okay, Kitty, you're like under me. You gonna say hi? Like, pick that up. There we go. Hi. Yes, I know. So EGUI and Tauri have some. Let's see, where's my window? There's some background there. We have, besides a whole ton of windows open from last time, you can tell we were down a rabbit hole when we had 1,000 tabs open still. There is, if we go to GitHub, there's an EGUI plugin already. The integration works. You can have a Tauri app that also has some EGUI elements. But as far as I've dug into and understand, you can only have EGUI as like window number 2 or window number 3. So we haven't hit that point where in like production or stable use cases, you can have multiple layers in the same window. So there is this plugin existing, and if we would look at, like, I don't think there's too much code here, so we can take a peek at it real quick. There is, so we get some attachments to the main thread with the window target. GL window here, and then E-frame native. I think this is about where it ends up being. We get that attachment. Oh, really? I didn't realize it was using EGUI Glow. I thought it was with the Winit integration. Oh, create GL window. I haven't actually tried the GL window, I don't believe. Because the gluten windows I think are different than like Winit, right? Window message, window set. There is the E-frame, and the E-frame is sort of the attachment point, or that has like the attachment to the like renderer, I think is the terminology that they use. Cat hair and a skin do not agree with each other. Okay, so this is the main. These are like all the like window functions. Minimize, show, hide. It's just a little bit on the loud side. There you go. But I don't think there's any user message. Yeah. So we basically have 3 Rust files. We've got a plugin, EGUI plugin builder, runtime new, app handle. So it looks like it uses the plugin system, and oh, Tauri, use Tauri runtime RAI. Okay. Go through this a little bit slower here. Create window channel is focus, plugin handler. Get window, create window. So I think the create window is mostly happening here because we get like the E-frame native options. And then that goes into the create a GL window, which I believe is coming from EGUI. Create GL window. Windows. Window wrapper, okay. So I think kind of like right around in here is where the actual window creation ends up happening. Yeah. And here's our event loop. So if we would go, so this is the Tauri as the like main container, EGUI running with inside of it, but not in the main window that has the web view. So one of the use cases that I think we explored on stream, gosh, like 6 months ago or more now, and when this integration was first announced, the demo was having like a password pop up. So the way WebView works, there's some, what's the word I'm looking for? There's there's situations where it might make sense to actually have that password in something like the like a password or login handled in something like EGUI, because less of that like state lives around in this web view. I mean, it's sandboxed. It's definitely, I would qualify it as secure, but you're starting to get into like low level. Is this thing that you type in, where is it stored like in RAM, and can somebody access it kind of stuff, which gets outside of my immediate security knowledge. There's potentially use cases for like a second EGUI window or multiple windows, one of which is EGUI, or one or many of which are EGUI. So we're gonna keep that on the side. We want to look at, let's look at EGUI now. EGUI has no JSS, HTML, or CSS. Yes, yeah. And so that's probably the best way to say it, because it's always secure as the baseline Rust application. I think that's a good way to say it. JS is always risky because it's like running, like it has to run within that like WebView sandbox, which has security features built around it. But it runs at like a higher level of abstraction, I guess, to where you have less control over like how it's handling state or memory management, that type of stuff. Whereas within Rust, you have greater control over it. Maybe is that? I hesitate to say any of it is insecure, because Daniel, you know that like we definitely put our effort into making sure that's secure. But JS is always going to have a little bit more inherent risk to it, because it's operating at a little bit higher abstraction, I guess, and you have less control over like how it handles memory and such. EGUI is kind of ugly though, and I don't know if it's possible to change the UI. I think that's one of the interesting benefits of using something like CSS, because that ecosystem is so rich, and the ability to describe UIs is very mature. And I think the issue with EGUI sort of also exists in other like game frameworks and such. You're sort of limited to what that framework is going to, what each of those frameworks are going to give you as, you know, ways that you can draw something or display something. And CSS has just been around for a long time, and it's very mature. And I think that's probably that specific bit is the thing that's interesting for me, where having a WebView plus is a very interesting use case. I still do think that there's use cases to have EGUI. I don't know that I would say Bevy plus EGUI plus Tauri. But I mean, we're not shipping production code here. We're seeing what we can do. We're experimenting. We are, playing around with the rabbit hole. We're diving into the rabbit hole. That sounds much better. We're diving into the rabbit hole and just, seeing what, Okay, I'm gonna EGUI. Live things. Okay, so they have a bunch of integrations, which is in your bullet points right here. There's the E-frame, which we had kind of noted before. That is the abstraction which allows you to ship both WebAuthn and desktop native. And it works with the Winit, Glow, and WGPU. So I want to peek at the Winit integration quick, and we can see how, because Tauri is built on top of Rai and Tau. Tau is a fork of Winit because the scope that we wanted to hit for Tau and expected to have available to us was not something that Winit wanted to support at the time. Things are starting to come back together. They're not necessarily at that point right now, but it's getting to the point where Rai can use a Winit window. And there's not too much here, so I think I want to dig into this a little bit. Yes, that. Mostly use EGUI as a debug UI. Interesting. I could see it. And then the way that EGUI draws as well, I feel like that architecture, it's a quote immediate mode. What is this? Immediate mode GUI. So it's like re-rendering on every loop. I think they've got a multiple options now where you don't have to do that now. But I feel like that like way it's rendering syncs up well with game engines because it's re-rendering on every frame as well. So I could definitely see that integration being nice and using it as a debug layer. Hi Kitty. Now, Chris, have you used EGUI for? Yeah, true. React is also immediate mode. True. Has it always been that way? Because that was that a? Yes. Okay. I'm trying to remember what they changed when they did Fiber. I feel like I haven't had to care about the React internals. I mean, they hit like 17, 18, and I haven't paid attention for years now because React server components. We won't talk about that though. Okay, so let's check out the EGUI Winit. There is also not too much here. So we kind of have these abstractions and these little like wrappers or helpers that make these attachments. Clipboard, RS, window settings. I think those are all pretty. Yeah, they're all pretty much actually window settings. Window size. So most of our meat is going to be in here, I believe. Now I would expect some attachment to the actual window. We could probably look for the E-frame because I believe the E-frame is where that starts happening. So window events. I didn't miss anything, did I? Winit. State. I'm doing a bunch of talking and like scrolling and just like not thinking about it. And scroll past all the stuff that I actually care about. EGUI input. So these are all the window events. On touch. On keyboard. In macros. Oh, okay. Does it actually do the window attachment type stuff in E-frame? So state, events, I mean, I guess that kind of makes sense. On mouse wheel, handle platform output. I think so. So if we look at eFrame, and they've got a web native EPI. What's EPI? I don't remember now. EGUI programming interface. Ah, interesting. Okay. And here we go. We're starting to see these bits that we've seen when we were working with Bevy and Rye. The raw window handle this is the bit that we were caring about when we were trying to get Rye working within Bevy. Native options. Kitty is being needy today. What do you need? Come on. She's meowing like she wants water, but I gave her water. What do you need? Do you just need cuddles? Come on up. Cats. They say they're like indifferent and not social, but I'll put this like behind me so she doesn't. Oh, okay, she's over there. But let's keep that butt down though. We don't need kitty only fans. That would be a different. That would be on a different website. All right, window info, location. All right, I think let's go take a look at eFrame real quick. Then we're gonna start looking at how eFrame would work with Bevy, because Bevy is in what we're trying going to be kind of that container element. And like our stretch goal is if we can, I'm not sure if Bevy. Does Bevy expect to like be the thing that controls the event loop? I think that was kind of the basis of, and with this like raw window handle, I think that was kind of the basis of what was controlling the integrations or I guess controlling is the best way to say it. Controlling the integration point of Tauri with other things. So like who has the main, or is an integration expecting to hold on to that event loop? Okay, so we see a bunch of create event loop and win an app. Here, event loop run return, and then we get here's a win at events, event results, control flow, and I think this I remember this control flow being important. Run and exit. Kind of interesting, like they've got with the what are those called? Config. Those things. When you run like a Rust build, it actually uses those to determine what it needs to build and include on the bundle. So if you don't have those features enabled, it just doesn't include it, which is really nice. And like if you're writing something like JavaScript, you need to be a little bit more careful on how you're like combining the files. But you could just put all this in the same file and use that functionality to tree shake, as it were. Okay, so this is all gluten. I don't know that I think I'm most interested in Winit and the Winit integration. But like they've got Glow Winit app. So is gluten running in GL in Winit? I mean, it kind of looks like it. Run Glow with event loop. Here's the EPI native options. And then you give it the event loop. And WGPU integration. Yeah, so I think Winit is the window itself, and then you can do GL or WGPU. And here, create window. Window builder, apply native options to window, okay window. So like this ends up being, this is the loop that's creating the window. And that's for WGPU. So I think all of the lift to actually like create and handle the windows ends up happening in the E-frame. So now I did, as I was poking around to see like, is this even possible? Is this something that makes sense for me to try to dig into in stream? I ran across Bevy EGUI, which seems like it's being maintained. So I'd presume that this still works. And like if we look at the integration here, we start to see some familiar code. They got EGUI Bevy integration. Why don't you just use that? I think we are. They have a function, which is a system, and it runs on update because immediate mode. We have our RAI as a system. I think this is doing what we needed to. So I ran across this yesterday. Or 2 days ago. I don't remember when I was trying to determine if this was like even on the table. And this is doing like you can see some world.query. We've dug into this code a little bit. We get a little bit more of the like, it's using shaders type stuff. So I don't know if it's, I think it's actually rendering directly. I don't know if it's actually like a separate thing on top of it, or if it's running like rendering it in the same. I mean, they're all in the same window. This is starting to get like into GL graphics language, shader type stuff that is outside of my area of expertise. We've played around a little bit with like the WGPU on stream, but we're definitely getting to the fuzzy edges of what I know. So I think what we were interested in accomplishing, I think this does it. It is EGUI settings, clipboard. I think this is doing it. Bevy EGUI actually implements a renderer for EGUI in Bevy's renderer. Okay, I was seeing bits of it that made me think that was the situation, but I didn't know enough to actually feel confident in saying that. And I think the thing for me that really started to, where was that now? Was it an EGUI node? We see a bunch of code that is familiar to, like this. We've got the world deck query, and we're getting a window. This I see some familiar code here on when we were trying to integrate Rye into the Bevy window. But then you go a little bit further and you start getting into like vertex and primitives. And I was wondering, is this actually implementing a renderer for EGUI and Bevy? I'm glad you're sort of implying that or well, not sort of. You're implying, or you're saying that seems to be the case. Bevy and EGUI can both target WGPU, and Bevy is basically WGPU plus plus. That's really hard to say. Yeah, that makes sense. So when we talk Bevy and Rye, we have it's more of a discussion of layers. Like we've got separate contexts just being drawn over the top of each other. Bevy and EGUI feels like more of a like it's rendering potentially like in the same. Is it in the same window? Or well, it's in the same window, but is it in the same like layer? Yeah, Bevy EGUI is its own render, not just WGPU, as far as you know. So the other option would be sharing the same WGPU context. Okay, so that's what I'm not sure about. Like, is it in the actual? Like, is it using a? Is it implementing a Bevy renderer and like having a separate layer context? Again, we're getting like the fuzzy edges of what I know about all of this. And then we also, so we've got WGPU and gluten, right? Which is GL. Does Bevy? I've heard Chris. I've heard you say that Bevy is basically WGPU plus plus. Can it also do GL? Fuzzy edges, fuzzy edges. And this, you're all along for the ride with me. So we're you're either learning or helping everybody else learn, or a bit of both. And I appreciate everybody here for it. I think we can just use this. It's technically going to accomplish our goal. I don't know if it's going to be actually a separate layer though. So like, could we draw the an EGUI thing above the webview thing, which is above a Bevy thing? Bevy EGUI existed long before external WGPU context worked. It's a custom renderer on top of Bevy's renderer, which is an abstraction over WGPU. Yeah, okay. Is it rendering it within the same? Nowadays, the other. Is it rendering it within the same context though? Is context the right word for this? Okay. It's inside Bevy, but it's its own layer. Okay. That's I feel like I'm failing to have the right words to explain that. So thank you. I'm presuming. Whoop. I flipped the camera, so I still always forget that I need to point the opposite direction. Considering that we can't have this webview layer from Rye rendered in between. Can't sandwich them. Which way? Here. We can't sandwich. We can't have a EGUI, Bevy, webview. Gotta love those graphics, right? They're so lifelike. I think we just try this. It's gonna at least hit on the spirit of what we were trying to accomplish. So let's go ahead and grab this. It does only say 11 here. Well, their example says 11, but they do specifically say that 0.23 supports 0.12. And we're technically on 0.12, but a rev. I think it'll be fine. I think it'll be fine. And you can see here that we're pulling in the branch of Rye with this, or excuse me, the fork of Rye with this branch that has the embedded web view. We definitely got tripped up on that last time. We were working off our branch. We tried to pull in the web view, and I pulled it in from the Tauri apps Tauri apps/Rye. Any reason you're not on release 0.12? Yes, because reasons. This okay, so a little bit of background. If you didn't catch it before or weren't here for it, this is a small game written around or written for a workshop that Chris worked on. And yep, this Chris had started working on a branch to support 0.12, and that's the rev that branch was pointing at, and that's what I started doing it on. So we streamed this last Tuesday, and yeah, 0.12 dropped on Saturday, right? So this is a rev that's at least a week old. I'm presuming it'll be fine. It'll get the job done. I mean, we're not expecting. I'm not gonna ship this. Okay, Bevy EGUI. I think all we're gonna need to really do is add this system, which just feels too easy, I guess. So I guess just add this system here. And doop. There's no difference? Okay, cool. I don't know, we might upgrade. Maybe just for the socials. yes. I think this is my feel at this point. Like, I'm on like so many layers of unreleased software in uncommitted code in branches. Like, it's fine. It's fine. If it works and builds, it's in the video. That's as close as we're gonna get to shipping it. Okay, so UI. I'm not. Let's change that. I'm not thrilled with that. Say EGUI. The EGUI. System. I don't know. Whatever. It works. And we got the prelude already, so we just need the EGUI, Bevy EGUI. Let's throw it up here somewhere. Boom. So theoretically, this should just work, right? It's potentially possible that it's like being drawn behind this layer, so we might want to move this. It feels like when I first tried to use Embassy on an ESP32. Embassy. Embassy is oh, that's not what I was remembering. Modern embedded framework using Rust and async. For some reason I had in my head that it was what's that other graphics? I'm just at a loss for words. I'm like in their Discord, so I'm looking in my Discord right now. This is gonna bug me if I don't find it here. Embark. That's what I was thinking of. They have got a bunch of like Rust libraries, but they do, is it Rust GPU? Some GPU rendering stuff. And their Embark Studios. Yeah, the finals. There we go. That's what I was trying to think of. They worked on the finals. But they've got a bunch of open source libs. So when you said Embassy, that's where my brain went. I was like, oh, this one. But they've got a couple in here that seem really interesting that I've been keeping an eye on. Yeah, Jaya. Looks pretty. And then the Rust GPU, I think. Yeah, ESP30. That's why I was like, wait, ESP32 in a rendering library? I'm like, no wonder you felt like that. I am actually, I'm aware of what an ESP32 is because I don't know if we'll do this on stream. I've got a bunch of little hardware things that I eventually want to do, and I'm sort of waiting on some of them. We did this on stream. It's a e-ink display, which actually has stuff drawn on it right now that there's some PII. So I'm not gonna show what's on the front of it, but we played around with that on stream, and I've got a Home Assistant server running. So actually, in my shopping cart, I've got like 3 ESP32s because I want to do some Bluetooth proxy stuff. Because I have a bunch of like temperature sensors in the house, and I want to proxy them to my Home Assistant, which is in a Docker container. And Bluetooth sucks in a Docker container, especially on where I have the Docker container hosted. Anyways, I want to do some embedded stuff. I don't know what's gonna happen. Some of it I was waiting for. I'm kind of also interested in the RISC-V stuff. Turing Pi. I've been waiting for this thing to ship. Keeps getting delayed. Keeps getting delayed. It was supposed to ship and arrive in October. Boards are ready, and I had waited so long, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna get the RK1 compute module, which is a Rock chip, so RISC based system. And I was like, well, I'm in this a lot. I might as well just get the 32 gigabit versions. The 8 and 16 gigabits are good to go, and they're shipping. 32 bit are delayed, so I might not actually get this until like January of next year. You're still trying to find embedded projects to work on. I think we're probably gonna we're like digressions deep at this point. So we're probably gonna do a bunch of Tauri stuff here. And I do want to do like some Tauri mobile stuff again, and explore the Ryan Tau stuff. But after that, I do want to start to get into the embedded stuff too. And maybe one of the ways that we work into it is trying to get a Tauri app running in like a Raspberry Pi. So pull in the Raspberry Pi OS. I can only think of the flavors Buster, and it's the Raspberry Pi OS. Is it just Raspberry Pi OS? Okay. Raspbian? Oh, formerly Raspbian. Okay. Raspberry Pi OS. see if we can get Tauri running in Raspberry Pi OS. That might be our way that we start to work into the embedded stuff a little bit. I do have a camera, an overhead camera, that I need to figure out how to fit somewhere into the stream. That'll make that easier. But embedded stuff is definitely on my my to-do list. So you got this Pico sitting in your desk connected to a breadboard and not getting used much. The other, I don't know what. Well, I don't think I'm gonna do anything with the ESP32s, especially since is it Lond? Lond. Am I saying that right? I don't know if I'm really up for that microcontroller rusted pain. So I might try to go a little bit more mainstream, but Pico and lights might be interesting. We'll see. I do want to do a little bit more with this. And that's a Raspberry Pi Zero W V1. Twitch. Yeah, that and this. I don't know if I'm gonna get into Rust on this, but those are boards with a bunch of sensors on it. There's like 6 different sensors on those 2 boards. So those will probably be the like embedded stuff that we play around with depending on how deep we dig into it. Okay. Is it running? I mean, we saved it and then we got distracted. Not saying it. Bring it on. I'm wondering if let's just shift it over a little bit. I'm wondering if it's like EGUI's rendering and it's just rendering over the top of it. Let's just restart it as well. Wait for that compile. I'm wondering. Okay, so we're getting some other Bevy things in there. I'm wondering if it didn't actually Bevy WinIt, WGPU. This feels like it's doing more. There's Bevy EGUI. Okay, so I don't think it actually had rendered before. I don't think we needed to move the webview layer. Ooh. A trait is not implemented for function item 4. Okay, we've got some fun. You have multiple versions of Bevy installing. Ooh. Yes, I didn't even notice that. Good call. Yep. Okay. You said it was fine to upgrade. I think we're just gonna give that a shot. So we'll just comment that out for the moment. I don't know that I'm gonna actually need that rev anymore, but is it 0.12? Oop. Wrong save button. Bouncing between I've got the same I use the same keyboard for both my Mac and my Windows work, so sometimes I mix up the buttons. My Windows is really itchy. You're gonna love this though, right? Windows and Mac keys on the same board. That's definitely not the reason I get confused, right? Okay, that felt like a lot cleaner compile. I didn't have all these random revs, and yeah, we got a couple of devs and a couple non-devs in the previous render, so all right, different error. EGUI system does not exist. Okay, maybe I shouldn't have renamed this. EGUI system function. EGUI system. Let's double check. We need EGUI plugin. I didn't add the plugin. We just added the system. So I'd guess that that's probably my issue. That might have been the issue before, but there we go. Look at that. WebView. Right behind it is Bevy. Right behind, or on the top, in the top left there, is the hello. That would be EGUI. So what we have, if we moved the WebView layer, we're not going to be able to. Oh, hey, here. Okay, this makes it much clearer. I can move this window around. We have Bevy and the EGUI layer is sort of like in the same, like it's a combined layer, but in different contexts. So the WebView is still being rendered over the top of it. So I don't think, at least with this specific integration and what Landa's saying before, I don't think we're going to be able to put EGUI over the top of the WebView with Bevy underneath, at least with this specific setup. You wish there was a better error message when missing plugins, but I'm not sure how that would be implemented. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess if I hadn't just seen that, I went, let's see what the docs say, because that's an error message there. I don't see anything that specifically says plugin at all. I encountered a panic in system. I mean, clearly it was an issue with the EGUI system itself. Yeah. Okay, so where do we go from here? I think the thing that I am, like, it's in here, it's working, and I can see where this would be really nice for, like, the Bevy inspector that you were talking about, Chris. If this is all that's needed to just get this like little thing over the top of it that gives you like a layer to use for debugging, I could see that where that would be really nice. But it's not quite as flexible, I think, as I was hoping. We're gonna call it we're gonna call it good. Like we checked the box. The thing I am curious about though is, and maybe some of the people that are deeper in Bevy here could fill me in a little bit if you know. Does Bevy render in a way that it expects to have direct access to that event loop? Could we put it, like if we look at the examples tests, is there, like, how tight is it to the Winit integration? I think that's the thing that I've never actually like shipped a Bevy app. I've done it and I've run it and I've gotten as far as like running cargo run and, you know, ta-da. What does it look like to ship a Bevy app, and how tight is it to that actual like window? Okay, so we get, they specifically note Winit. Is Winit the only integration? It seems like it. Bevy Winit created in the crates folder. Okay. Glam RS and then WGPU. We did play around with WGPU a little bit on stream a few months ago now. I think that was mostly with the WASM side of things though. Thanks and alternatives. Okay. So if we look at crates, and winit. Now there's a Bevy window and Bevy winit. Putting a pin in that, but I might want to come back and look at what the window library is. I feel like that's kind of a common pattern. All right. So like here you can see the Bevy use Bevy window. So window implements is winit Bevy winit the like glue code to tie Bevy window to winit? Would that be a fair way to describe it? Event loop. We've got a bunch of what are these called again? Config? I feel like I always forget what these are called. Config attributes. I don't know why I have such a hard time remembering that. And each of these has a specific way to tie to the actual event loop integration. It looks like they're all winit. Okay. Then here's our event loop builder. System state from world. All right, and our run, and then there's a run and run return. Okay, event loop, runner state, redraw. Is this the winner runner? Okay. Events, and those are all the window events. More events. And then create windows. And that comes from system, really? Interesting. So I think most of the code is here where we set up the event loop. And we get the return from run. So it doesn't seem like there's a similar expectation where you could set this up. I mean, I presume that you'd be able to like do a little bit more of a manual setup and combining all these together where you could have your own like Bevy winit, but it doesn't feel like it's set up in a way that would be kind to that. Maybe is probably the best way to say it. So it feels like the best integration is what we have, where Bevy is kind of that container thing, and then we have a web view rendered with inside of it. I am curious though what that looks like as far as what would happen when we want to start like embedding Tauri. That, I think that's definitely, that would be my open question. When this lands in Rye and moves upstream, is that in motion already? I feel like I heard somebody mentioning that it was getting to that point, but do we have any don't see anything yet. I think it's at that point where it's going to start moving forward, but it doesn't look like it has yet. If we get this pushed into Rye and then moved upstream into Tauri, if we look at Here, well, let's look at the like getting started guide. Just want to see like a main RS. Yeah, okay. Here. So we got the Tauri builder. Builder run. Like, I think within this, there's the expectation that it has control of the event loop. So if we start Bevy and Bevy is expected to control the event loop, and we can get, using the system, we can get a window handle, and it has the main event loop. I think Bevy would end up still needing to be the container in that point, in that like situation. So if this is our Bevy app. App new. We've got plugins, resources, and the systems. And within our system, we have the webview and knit. Webview and knit is where we query Bevy to eventually get that raw window handle. With that raw window handle, we can use the raw embedded webview to draw the actual webview in there. I suspect if my gut says that if this gets to the point where it's production shippable, that we would need to have Tauri as a system, and it might end up landing into like, in the same way EGUI is a plugin in a system. I suspect we might end up having a couple of those sort of situations where we have different loops or different hooks where Tauri needs to end up hooking into to do everything that it needs to do. But I'm not sure. I guess I'm less aware of what the system is versus a plugin. So all Bevy engine features are implemented as plugins. Okay, so a renderer is a plugin. That's why the EGUI plugin exists, I'm presuming. Because as we discussed, is it still there? No. The integration for EGUI is a renderer. Okay, systems are functions that run on a schedule. Okay. That schedule being, we've got like startup, post-startup, update. Plugins are basically add anything to an app. Got it. So that if I would have to guess at how this ends up landing, we would potentially have, I think this window handle is going to be a little bit of a like separate piece where we can pull it out from the builder, or we do this like Tauri builder default, or Tauri builder with additional parts to it, which then returns like a window handle or something like that. And then this run ends up getting triggered within like one of these systems. I think that would probably be the integration that I would anticipate seeing, because it doesn't seem like, and I don't know if it makes sense, but it doesn't seem like Bevy is built with the expectation that something else would be handling the event loop, and Bevy would kind of just be hooking into that. Does that sound right? Has anybody run across like Bevy being embedded inside something else? It seems like Bevy expects to be the foundation for the container. I don't see any reason otherwise. They like have a different architecture there. Because this is all events. Let's check out the window real quick. System. I just said I was gonna check out the window, but init windows get window. Okay, create window. Event writer. So does Bevy have, can you do, I haven't actually tried, but can you have like multiple, or does Bevy expect to work with multiple windows? Like it looks like there's it's iterating over the created windows. Yeah, Bevy can't hand off the window loop elsewhere. We only just got the ability to get a WGPU context from outside. Oh, mostly for VR XR. Interesting. So what's the, like what's the reasoning there? Or why would that be needed to be, why would you need that context from outside? That's interesting though. And I mean, I can't think of a reason that it would make sense where Bevy doesn't have the event loop. Oh, like literally just got the, can I not copy out of this window? Like, yes. Go, yes. Literally just got it, eh? This is 0.12. For context, that, okay. So, render plugin has been fully responsible for initializing the WGPU render context. Okay, OpenXR. It requires more control over rendering initialization. Is that because OpenXR needs to do things in the initialization that it needs to have some control over that context? We made it possible to pass in the WGPU render context at startup. Okay. Can be a normal, but oh, that's kind of nifty. Huh. So let's see where all this looks like VR type integrations. I was just curious how like this here plugin build, add systems, startup, update, pre-update. Okay. So like I'm yeah, okay. I like the way you say that. That's kind of what I was running too. There's this this setup yeah, there we go. Setup XR cameras. Yeah, I don't know anything. I mean, we're already starting to get on like the fuzzy edges of what I know in graphic stuff, OpenXR and VR and whatnot. I've gotten as far as that looks cool. I could see that though. Someone like initialization of when you're running like a window, you're creating a window and rendering into the window. I wonder if it's more of like a render target thing. Yeah, it acts like another screen, but not quite normal. That's like that's the feeling that I'm getting. It needs a little bit like you know, you've like camera. there's some expectation that when you are grabbing the feed from the camera, that camera only supports, so many things grabbing that. And when you first grab the feed to the camera, there's a little bit of an initialization. I have a feeling, like my gut says it's something in that vein, where you need to initialize that other screen. You hope to find time to play around with it. Do you have a VR XR setup? That's been the big thing for me. I was like, after Oculus, like a year or two after Oculus, I was finally to the point where I'm like, okay, maybe it's the point where I want to like dig into it a little bit. I'll wait for the next good VR platform to land. I'm not terribly set on giving my money or I don't know that I want anything to do with Meta. Like, that whole thing is and it feels like that's the only thing that's gone anywhere. You got an index? Okay. Yeah, I've just been like, I'll get the next like real good one, and I don't feel like it's it's been like years. I'm sure COVID had something to do with it, but I don't know. Maybe eventually. We got this nice computer. Where's my finger? Here, this way. You can see the rendering device on there. So like I've got the compute now to actually handle it. Both the GPU and the CPU compute. You don't think it has much to do with cameras, more the surface itself. Yeah. So not necessarily saying cameras, but like I was using cameras as a analogy of how I'm kind of how I'm thinking about my expectations on what it needs. So camera needs to grab the feed. It has like a little bit of initialization thing. I was wondering if similarly VR XR has some sort of like you need to render to the device, so there's like an initialization type period. Which is Bevy win it. No, I closed it all. So like I was wondering if it need to like grab access to like that rendering device and some initialization happens or whatever. Okay, how did we get down this? Big Swing and Beyond. Yeah, okay. That's definitely has me curious. I don't feel like I'm terribly comfortable jumping immediately to enthusiast level. And I think if I would want to get into it, I would want to get into it in a way where I could share it with the rest of my family. And that's not set up to do that. I mean, I appreciate what they're doing and I understand why they're doing that. Build your own VR setup. Yeah, I mean, you know, grab a Raspberry Pi, that should be fine, right? So yeah, like I don't know if I want to jump right to enthusiast, and I'm not going to be the only one using it for sure. Both adult and little faces, I would want to be able to you know, to experience it. So I don't know. We'll see. I've got plenty of other distractions. So I'm not hurting for new distractions here yet. Maybe after we dig into some of this and whatnot, maybe we'll start looking at XR VR stuff. Okay, so where were we? We were looking at Bevy win it. Okay, yeah, so Bevy seems to be, it seems to be that Bevy is going to be our container. You know, Valve can't count to 3, but they at least counted 2 at the index. Well, they came out with it was the index, and then they had a couple others that came out afterwards, and they seemed like they were going to be good. But then it seemed like once they came out and were released and people like started playing around with them, it feels like they fell flat. Like the leap that index made, just, I don't know. Maybe eventually. Okay, so Bevy, I think Bevy is going to be our container. So whatever we would do with Tauri, I think we would want to work within or need to work within that constraint if an integration with Bevy ends up being a very important thing to do. Which, yes, me, I would definitely like to have that happen. I just realized this is yeah. So I guess I don't know that there's going to be a real reason to run EGUI plus Tauri / Rye plus Bevy. So as a limitation, having EGUI and Bevy as a tighter render layer. So I don't know. I think we've kind of hit the end of this rabbit hole. Valve has never come out with another VR device. What was the it's been ages since I looked into this. Oh wait. There was the Valve Index, and then there was the Valve was working with somebody, right? Ooh, I am just like completely blanking on the other players in the space VR headset. What's the other like big? Okay, this is not really. Ah, okay. Yeah, I'm thinking of HTC. Yeah. Yeah, so I was thinking of the Vive. I was expecting, I guess, the Vive Pro. That was the I don't know why none of this is loading. The other thing too is I wanted wireless. So like 6E sounded like it was going to, wow, that took a while to load. 6E seemed like it was going to be the thing that would provide enough bandwidth where you could do VR wirelessly. And it seemed like everybody kind of had that feeling, and then just no first party integrations really. I think, yeah, like it seems like they've just started to land in first party implementations. But again, I don't know. Did HTC have anything to do with the Valve? They did the audio for a few others. What do you mean they did the audio? Oh yeah, I forgot about this. Like I wanted the device to be high-end, high graphic fidelity type thing. And it feels like the Valve Index did that at the time, and then they decided to target all the like mobile compute doesn't need a GPU type stuff, which was, yeah, okay, yeah, now I'm remembering. And none of that was like the thing that I was interested in. I want to be able to, like, if I'm going into VR, I want the immersion. and if I have the compute in a desktop, I kind of want to use that. I don't know. Okay, so Bevy, it seems like Bevy is going to be our container. I don't see a reason to experiment with anything more, and I don't know that I see a reason to experiment with EGUI as a separate layer. Like we could maybe... Hot take, wireless isn't worth the cost of needing a heavy battery. Yeah, like cable mounting is fine if you've got a space where, like if you have a dedicated space for VR, I can see that making more sense. I don't know if I would be able to get my wife to the point where she's okay having a cable hanging from the ceiling in our living room. So like my hope would be you have a headset, you put it on, you can play in the living room where the good chunk of our space is, and also have a feed pipe to the TV in there. That's the type of VR experience I was hoping for. And I mean, I think that's the situation, is the enthusiast, like full tracker type experience just went all in on the cable mounting because that was the only option. Like you have a dedicated VR space. Or this like mobile, mobile like MetaQuest type headset. I don't know. I've got games to play, things to do with family. Like it hasn't been a need that I've really, or like a thing that I've really been wanting to scratch. But I've wanted it for a while. It just hasn't hit that like perfect storm of checking all the boxes that I am interested in. Again, eventually, maybe. Okay. So Bevy EGUI, I don't see any reason to do an integration outside of like this, or something like Chris was talking about, where we've got what is it, Bevy? Where is it now? Yeah, here. The Bevy Inspector EGUI. I think most of what we would be interested in is EGUI has its use cases, but the ability and the maturity of CSS and the customization that comes with it. I think WebView plus Bevy is probably the integration that makes, that's the most interesting to me. So we did it. I think we can call this one. Check this one off. We've got our all three pieces. Is there anything else that we want to do with this? Maybe that's the last bit to discuss before we call it a day. Right, are we a little bit early? 10:30. Yeah, coming on in 2 hours. So there's the WGPU stuff, which is a little bit lower level. Bevy, again, we had mentioned, is kind of WGPU plus. So presumably, because we got Bevy working, I would presume that we can get WGPU working in a similar way. WGPU tends to be like, these frameworks are using or built on top of that. I guess I can't really think of anything else that we would want to do as far as combining these pieces. I think, at least for me, Bevy plus WebView was the interesting use case. And the thing that would be best positioned to actually ship something to production with. Is there any other use case? can we? I mean, I think there's probably use cases to use WGPU directly over, depending on like what you're doing. I could see WGPU plus a web view being a potential option. But most of these I think Blonde was kind of mentioning too. We had what, macro quad. There's the Vulkan. We talked a little about GL and gluten. Nano is I feel like I'm missing one here. Piston. I think Piston was the other one. You need to watch the replay. Never gonna say no to that. How's it going, John? Good to see you again. Got it. I mean, it's working. I don't. The use cases are we're starting to get to those edges of why would you use it like this, but we made it happen. It's mostly Bevy plus Rye and Bevy plus EGUI. Bevy being like this foundational piece that, so there's direct connections from Bevy to each of these, but the EGUI to Tauri connection is much weaker. But that's okay. I think the thing that I would want to explore would be Rye plus Bevy. I think maybe that if we're going to continue like exploring in this space more, multiple windows and Bevy plus webview in the same window, I think something we would want to potentially explore more is ways that we could share state between them. I've been asking why the whole time. Yeah, because we can. Yeah, John, O.12 just landed. What was that, on Saturday? I just watched Chris's video for O.12, I think, yesterday. But there's a new one after that. O.12 it's a hefty release. It's got some meat to it. That's for certain. So I don't know if there's really much else that we want to go into it. I think shared state between all these pieces is probably the next interesting piece to dig into. And we might end up wanting to wait for some of this to trickle into Rye. Or into the mainline Rye and then up into Tauri before we dig into it too much more. But like macro quad EC window HTML5. Is that WASM maybe? Bevy's releases are always hefty. Multiple windows, just Burke, TM, in Bevy. I mean, honestly, like my Bevy news, all of it comes from you, Chris. I think what they're doing is cool. What we do here on stream, that's about the extent of what I'm. That's my level of investment in Bevy. Hey, it looks cool. I don't know if I would love to work on games. I don't know if I have like the time and space to commit to it. So I appreciate hearing the news and what's happening on the sidelines. I am interested in though the integration between these two and potentially multiple windows. Not specifically just like multiple windows in Bevy, but like multiple windows in Bevy / Tauri. Because then you start having to talk about like how are we, something needs to control the state and something needs to sort of be like the source of truth and deliver that state to all these other like disparate pieces. Like if you're creating a web app and you're using we're doing like the classic React Redux. Big state at the root. We're single pane of glass. All that state is just contained in that piece. And we're potentially like syncing that state with a backend, server somewhere. That discussion becomes much more interesting when everything is local, but you're sort of like syncing the state between multiple windows, multiple like contexts. Like here we've got, we basically have 3 contexts here, which is very interesting. Yeah, that's why you make the release videos. There's a ton of people that won't read the release notes in depth. Yeah. And I think there's like level of involvement with these things where like there's projects where I follow and am interested in to the point where I'm going to read the release notes or actually read the like PRs and watch the PRs. And then there's these, something like Bevy where my level of investment is just I'm interested to see how it progresses as a framework. You could run Tauri in Bevy Rye WebView and get multiple windows just like that. You could run Tauri in Bevy Rye WebView. I feel like I'm missing something there. I feel like there's a piece to that I'm missing. It's an incredibly dumb idea. I'm here for ideas that don't necessarily make sense, but sometimes because we can is enough to experiment with it. I think a lot of this too is if we having the option or because we can is something that opens up possibilities that we might not have thought of. It feels like why there isn't a need to do this, but then at some point there might be a use case that actually makes sense. So I'm never going to say no to anything. I might say, why do you need to do it this way? But there's use cases for everything. And this use case is content. Just to see how all these pieces sort of come together. So this is more of a learning, the use cases as a learning experience. Yeah, so a bunch of these other libraries, I don't know that there's going to be, I don't think there's really anything terribly interesting that we would want to dig into. I'd presume that if we would make Tauri work with Bevy, everything else would sort of naturally like follow suit or fit into that. It feels like Bevy is kind of the Bevy's the thing or the thing that everybody looks to is I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I feel like everything is, I look at Bevy and from Bevy, I just assume that everybody else is like following what Bevy's doing. I don't know. Okay. Where are you going with this? I'm very curious. I feel like there's something in here that I want to unpack real quick. You can run Tauri and Bevy Rye WebView. Is that basically, are you saying what we've done is basically like that? So if we have Tauri and Tauri sort of like in a Bevy container, Tauri could theoretically create windows too. What that looks like is something worth exploring, but like the interesting bit is I think all of these were set up with the expectation that you could have multiple windows. So like we could have Tauri and Tauri have a main window and then EGUI have its own windows. So we could have multiple windows. We could have Bevy and Bevy creates multiple windows. But this layering is definitely the new piece here. And with the layering, I think it speaks more to a more considerate implementation to where they work closer or they work together better in a way that each could control opening up windows and each could potentially have a handle to that window and render something in that window. So like, what does it look like if we have Bevy being the main container controlling the event loop and Tauri is integrated with inside that, but Tauri could create or destroy a web view on the main window or on any of the side windows that Bevy opens up to. Can you transparentize the web view? I think so. I'm pretty sure. And that that would be the multiple web views on top of each other situation, I think, where you could do like a multiplayer surf the web type experience. So one web view renders like, you know, a twitter.com or okay. So the website formerly known as twitter.com. And then everybody could be joining in on a second layer with visible cursors, being able to like click around or scroll around in it. So there is. Let's take a quick peek at that. I think that's a good thing to poke at and then end on. Do we have an example like that already though? I'm pretty sure we did that on stream. Pretty sure I've saved it. Maybe not. We've definitely done. If you turn off the like window decorations, you can have a window that's with like a transparent background. I don't know. We might be able to do some of that with Rye, but I don't know if it's actually integrated with this embedded web view. That probably is the little bit that I'm not sure about. It might actually be in here though. Whoop, builder, crap. Builder 3 dot attributes. What else do we have in here? Okay, specify the web view background color. So I think this is, yeah, you can see a little bit of it here. If when you have a browser window, so you open up something like Chrome has like a default CSS. So if you've done web dev for long enough, you're probably familiar with like reset CSS or normalized CSS, which attempts to take the built-in browser CSS and set it up in a way which is consistent across browser implementations. It's less of an issue these days. Much more, you know, a decade or plus ago, where the default like CSS or implementation was different enough that you needed this like reset sort of situation. But within that, as I understand, within that there's a default color. So if you're just like rendering a window and you've got like that default color, I think that still comes through. But with the web view, you can set the transparency to true. Specify the web view background color. This will be ignored if transparent is set to true. So the web view has default background color. You can change that default with this. But you can also adjust the transparency. Okay. Whether the web view should be transparent. Okay, maybe we can do it here. Is it just false? Wait, transparent. I want transparent to be true. Boolean? Okay. I don't know if I need to rerun this or not, but We might need to find a site that has some expectations. Okay. No method name transparent. Okay. So what is that coming from? Whether the web view should be transparent. Yeah, like I'm wondering if it's just not implemented for the embedded web view. I would expect that to land. So my expectation is that this would be something that we can do once it would land in the main Rye repo and or I think this would be a Rye implementation. So once it lands in Rye, this embedded web view with like a deep and full implementation, I think it would have this option for transparency, in which case we could do like a web UI over Bevy or a web UI over the top of like another web view. So I think that's also kind of an interesting use case, because there's if you're creating a web app, you have a quote single pane of glass. All of your state is shared, or all of your state is within that like single pane. If you start wanting to have like a button where you click to pop out part of the UI into a separate window, I wonder if it starts to make sense to render some of that as a separate web view, to where you don't have this switch where you're like, am I in this single pane of glass or am I in a separate window? If we just have multiple layers of web views over the top of each other, I have no idea if that would be performant whatsoever. That might be something to play around with at some point. But like, that might be an interesting abstraction to where now you're always handling the state in the same way. And it's just, am I rendering these three pieces of UI in the same window, or are they in separate windows? They're always in separate web views though. I would definitely be curious to play around with that. Doesn't seem like this transparent is rendered here though. And I thought we had done experiment on stream with that. Do we have anything in the guides about it? Multi-window, calling REST from the front end, window customization. I'm gonna guess it's in here. Custom title bar. Where would we have had that? Window config. Transparent here. And I think this is the other bit. Probably only going to be a thing that you want to do on Windows, because and this actually is interesting. If you would want to ship a Bevy app with a UI layer over the top of it, written in HTML, JavaScript, CSS, if your expectation is that the window has transparency, macOS private API is potentially going to be something that's going to throw a stick in your cogwheels. Thanks for stopping by, Chris. I think we're about done. I don't know that it's worth like diving into this anymore. I'm pretty sure we did a stream on this a while ago. Yeah, a number of game engines use HTML. Yeah, you missed it earlier, but I was saying that I had read an article for City Skylines 2, and that uses Unity as its game engine, and the UI is written in React, which is interesting. So like the pattern has been established. It's just not it's not in a place where we could take advantage of that with Tauri until this I closed it, I guess. That RFC is sort of like enabling this. Example in SimCity, CSS and HTML. The one that everyone hated due to online connection. Yeah. Yeah, it's the City Skylines 2 is got performance issues, so it's kind of odd saying, like, hey, this is a cool pattern, and questioning the performance profile of it, and then City Skylines 2 also not being great performance wise. I am curious though how they, like, if I mean, also Mac isn't terribly well supported in the game industry at period. It's starting to change, especially in this like latest round of Apple Silicon. But if you're doing this and you need a web view and you need your expectation of some level of transparency, I wonder if this is going to start causing you issues. The this fact that it's a private API that could cause issues trying to ship the Bevy plus a UI layer over the top of it that is a WebView plus CSS. Used V8 and Unreal Engine 4 blueprints, but it was rough. It was CEF Chromium embedded framework. Yeah. And I think, so that's the other, so maybe that's it. Is CEF, well, CEF still ends up having to use WebKit under the hood on Mac, right? Because the limitations in Mac that require you to use Safari or like the Safari WebView, WebKit. Because the other interesting bit to that is the is it servo? Is it servo.org? Yep. It is slowly coming back to life. Part of me is hoping that servo comes back in a way that it supports the idea of what Chromium and CEF do, but in a way that servo being written in Rust, we could have some level of like, we're not shipping 600 megabyte browser for every little app that you're using. And if you do something like that, does that mean that you can then get around this when you're on Mac? I don't know. I think that's open-ended. At least for me, I'm not sure if that's a question that has an answer yet. But it's an answer that I'm very interested in. So yeah, I think that's where we're gonna call it today. Though I don't know that there's too much more to go in here. I think there's some interesting use cases. We'll probably dig into it again once it lands in Rye or Tauri upstream to see like what a Bevy plus Tauri integration might look like. But I don't know that there's too much more atrocities that we can commit in this line of messing around with stuff. So thanks for stopping by. Chris Lund, thanks for catching the end of it, John. Chaub. I really want to say your name correctly. It's gonna bother me. Can I? Maybe I'll look it up after stream. That's yeah. I feel like my head knows how to pronounce it, but I just can't get my mouth to say it. Anyways, thanks for stopping by, everybody. Next Tuesday, I'm not sure what we'll do. I don't know that there's too much more to go down this line of playing around with things. Feel free to leave thoughts in the comments on what we should play around with next. Otherwise, we'll figure it out, and I'll see you next Tuesday. Right? The holidays are starting to come up. So Thanksgiving in the US, we'll see how that lands, but I think we're good for next Tuesday. So I'll see you all next Tuesday, and have a good rest of the week. Got the button ready. Bye.